Once upon a time, in a faraway land, there was a kingdom ruled by a kind and just queen. The queen had everything she could ever wish for: wealth, power, and a beautiful castle, but what she truly longed for was a child. She had been married for years, but no child had come of the union, and her heart was heavy with the longing for a child to call her own. One day, while taking a walk in the palace gardens, the queen stumbled upon a strange plant with beautiful, shimmering leaves. As she admired the plant, she noticed a small, glowing seed nestled among the leaves. Curious, she picked up the seed and examined it closely, and as she did so, she felt a warm, tingly sensation spreading through her body. Excited by the strange seed, the queen rushed back to her chambers to plant it in a pot. For days she tended to the plant, watering it and watching it grow. And as the plant grew taller and taller, the queen felt a strange connection to it, as if it were her own child. But little did the queen know that the strange plant was no ordinary plant. It was a magical plant, imbued with the power to grant wishes. And as the plant continued to grow, it began to glow brighter and brighter, as if it were preparing to grant a wish. One night, as the queen slept, she dreamt of the magical plant speaking to her. It told her that it could grant her deepest wish, but with a warning: be careful what you wish for sometimes what we think we want is not what we truly need. The queen woke up with a start, her heart pounding with excitement and fear. She knew what she wanted more than anything: a child. But could she trust the magical plant to grant her wish without any negative consequences? Days passed, and the queen could not shake the feeling that the plant was calling out to her, urging her to make a wish. Finally, unable to resist any longer, she stood before the plant and closed her eyes, wishing with all her might for a child to call her own. As she opened her eyes, she saw the plant glow brighter than ever before. And suddenly, she felt a warmth spread through her body, a feeling of pure joy and happiness that she had never experienced before. The queen knew that her wish had been granted, but what would happen next? Would her long-awaited child be everything she hoped for, or would the wish come with a price? Months went by, and the queen's wish came to fruition. She gave birth to a beautiful baby girl, with bright blue eyes and soft blonde curls. The queen's heart was overflowing with love and joy, and she spent every waking moment doting on her daughter. As the child grew, it became clear that she possessed a special gift. Whenever she laughed, flowers would bloom, and birds would sing. Whenever she cried, the skies would darken, and the wind would howl. It seemed that the magical plant had indeed granted the queen's wish, but with a twist. As the years went by, the queen watched her daughter grow into a young woman with a heart as pure as gold. But the queen knew that her daughter's gift was a blessing and a curse, for it drew unwanted attention from those who would seek to use her powers for their own gain. One day, as the queen and her daughter were taking a stroll in the palace gardens, they were approached by a group of strangers with dark intentions. The queen knew that she had to protect her daughter at all costs, but how? The queen quickly gathered her daughter close and began to run through the gardens, trying to escape from the strangers who were pursuing them. But the strangers were persistent, and soon they caught up to the queen and her daughter. Just as the strangers were about to lay their hands on the young woman, a powerful gust of wind swept through the gardens, knocking the strangers to the ground. The young woman had instinctively used her powers to protect herself and her mother. But the queen knew that they couldn't stay in the kingdom any longer. They needed to leave and find a place where her daughter's powers would be accepted and celebrated, not feared and persecuted. So the queen made the difficult decision to leave behind everything she had ever known and journey to a faraway land, where her daughter's powers would be understood and embraced. And with a heavy heart, she set out with her daughter on a journey into the unknown. As they traveled through the vast lands, the queen and her daughter encountered many challenges, but they also found kind-hearted people who offered them shelter and food along the way. The young woman's powers continued to grow stronger, and she learned to control them, using them to help those in need. Finally, after months of travel, they arrived at a beautiful land where magic was celebrated, and those with special gifts like the young woman's were welcomed with open arms. The queen and her daughter settled into a small cottage on the edge of a vast forest, where the young woman could practice her magic without fear of persecution. The queen and her daughter knew that they couldn't let the sorcerer succeed in his evil plans. They decided to use their powers to gather other magical beings from across the land to form an alliance against him. They traveled far and wide, through forests, across mountains, and over seas, seeking out the most powerful and kind-hearted magical creatures they could find. They spoke to fairies, gnomes, unicorns, and even dragons, all of whom were willing to join their cause. Together, they formed a great army of magic, ready to face the sorcerer and his minions. The queen and her daughter led the charge, with the young woman's powers at their peak, blooming with each step she took. The battle was fierce, with both sides unleashing powerful spells and magical attacks. The sorcerer had an army of dark creatures at his command, but the queen and her daughter had the strength of their allies on their side. The young woman fought with all her might, her powers growing stronger with each passing moment. She used her magic to heal her allies, protect them from harm, and strike down their enemies. The queen fought alongside her daughter, her own magic a force to be reckoned with. She had learned much in her travels, and had become a formidable warrior in her own right. The battle raged on for what seemed like hours, but finally, the sorcerer began to weaken. His dark magic could not withstand the combined might of the queen, her daughter, and their allies. With one final burst of power, the young woman struck down the sorcerer, his dark magic dissipating into the air. The queen and her daughter embraced, tears of joy streaming down their faces. They had succeeded in their quest, and the land was at peace once more. But as they surveyed the battlefield, the queen and her daughter knew that their work was not yet done. There were still others who needed their help, other battles to be fought. And with renewed determination, they set out to bring light and hope to those who needed it most. As they journeyed across the land, the queen and her daughter continued to use their powers for good. They helped to rebuild villages that had been destroyed by the sorcerer's minions, and they brought hope to those who had lost everything. The young woman's reputation grew even stronger, and people from all over the land came to seek her help. She used her powers to heal the sick, to bring rain to parched lands, and to soothe troubled hearts. The queen was proud of her daughter, and she knew that she had become a great leader in her own right. Together, they inspired others to use their own gifts for good, and they created a community of people who were dedicated to bringing light to the darkest corners of the land. But as they traveled, they also encountered new challenges. There were those who did not believe in their cause, who saw their magic as a threat. And there were others who sought to use their powers for their own selfish gain. The queen and her daughter knew that they must be careful, that they must use their powers wisely and judiciously. And so they continued on their journey, ever vigilant, always ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. One day, as they were traveling through a dense forest, the queen and her daughter heard a cry for help. They followed the sound, and soon came upon a small village that was being terrorized by a group of bandits. The villagers begged for the queen and her daughter's help, and they knew they could not refuse. The young woman used her magic to create illusions and distract the bandits, while the queen and her allies worked to subdue them. As they fought, the queen noticed that one of the bandits seemed different from the others. He seemed to be fighting against his will, as if he had been forced to join the bandit gang. The queen approached him, and spoke to him kindly. Slowly, he began to open up to her, telling her of his struggles and how he had been coerced into joining the bandits. The queen listened to him with compassion and promised to help him. With the help of her daughter and their allies, the queen was able to convince the bandit to leave the gang and start a new life. She helped him find work in the village, and even taught him a little bit of magic. The queen and her daughter knew that this was just one small victory in the grand scheme of things, but they also knew that every little bit helped. They continued on their journey, ready to face whatever challenges and opportunities lay ahead. The queen and her daughter journeyed on, and over time, their reputation grew. They became known as wise and compassionate leaders, who used their powers for good and inspired others to do the same. Through their efforts, the land became a brighter and more hopeful place, and the people were grateful for all that they had done. The queen and her daughter knew that their work was far from over, but they also knew that they had made a difference. As they traveled, they talked about all the things they had seen and done, and all the people they had helped. They laughed together, and shared stories of their adventures. And as they walked, they both knew that they were not alone. They had each other, and they had the love and support of all the people they had helped. They knew that as long as they continued to use their powers for good, they would always have the strength to face whatever challenges lay ahead. And so they journeyed on, ready to face the future with hope and courage, and knowing that together, they could create a better world for all.